Hi, welcome to One by One Guitars. This is number 3 in my video series 100 by 70, meaning trying to build 100 guitars by my 70th birthday next October. I'm going to be finishing up number 90 before the end of this year, which means I'm going to have 10 guitars that I have to organize and build in less than a year, and that counts the couple of winter months where there's not a ton I can really do. So organization is going to be key, even more than normal years. Okay, so what I've been doing is, building off of what I talked of last time, is I've been pulling top sets and deciding, well, I think I want to build, say, a Telecaster style guitar, or like the one behind me, just general style of guitar, what I think it might look like, and then I've got to pull components. So what I want to talk about today is the organization two ways. One of organization of components, pieces, and the other is organization of process. And I think of it as a recipe, just like I love to bake. And the first thing you always start with is your ingredient list. You got to make sure you've got everything, right? So the same way with building a guitar is that I have to have an ingredient list. Being the organizational guy that I am, nothing like a good spreadsheet, right? Is I do, for every guitar I build, I have a folder. And part of that's keeping paperwork and wiring diagrams and things. But the first part I do is I have a master spreadsheet that lists all the parts that might go into a guitar, and then I can select them because certain parts have to go together and won't go with a different kind of part and so on. And it also lets me know that, yes, I have everything I need before I start. Just like there's a fancy French term in cooking called mise en place, which means everything in its place. Meaning you've got all your ingredients and they're all kind of out on the counter, and you've measured out, you know, your 2 cups of flour and your 1/4 cup of sugar and whatever else you need. You're all ready to go. So you aren't halfway through your process of making something and realize, oh dang, I didn't have brown sugar, or oh, I'm out of, lemon peel, whatever it is that you're looking for. I don't want to run into that issue. I want to know before I start the build that I have every single thing down to every little screw that I need. Okay, so that lets me track that. And in front of you, let me set this aside, in front of me, I should say, are all the components that will go into building a guitar very much like this one. It'll be a redwood top. Backwood's a little different, but it will also have a maple sandwich layer, and obviously bridge, tuner, pickups, neck blank fretboard, all the components that have to go into it. So I've pulled them together to make sure I have everything, and I actually do. Everything I haven't pulled out yet are a few little screws, but I know I've got them. The second part is the actual recipe. And again, if you've ever baked anything or cooked anything, is you may have grandma's recipes on index cards, or you go to the internet or a cookbook. You've got the steps that you're supposed to do things, so you don't A, forget to do something, and B, you're doing it in the order it needs to be done. Well, I do the same thing. Again, going back to my folder here, for building this style of what's called a set neck, meaning it's glued in at an angle, I've got my flow chart, if you will. This is my recipe that tells me what I need to do in what order. Okay, and certain things, yeah, you can do them in a different order. Certain things you can't, or it really makes life difficult. And then same thing for this style body that has a top on it and certain style of routes. For example, there are routes that need to be done before this top gets glued on to the body. If I forget and don't do them ahead of time, it's going to make life really difficult for me. So that's the quick overview, if you will, of got to organize my parts, and then I have to organize my process. And I'm going to turn off the camera and then put everything together to show you kind of what my package looks like, if you will, for my mise en place. Okay, I'm back. So you can see I've kind of compiled everything back into manageable pile rather than everything spread out. So I've got all my wood pieces plus the top. I've got my folder with my parts list, and everything can go nicely in this. Well, these are great because they keep all the dust off, especially the electronic components, while I'm working. One other little quick I think, analogy to cooking that I like to think about is, especially if you're into baking, you know, you have dry ingredients, things like the flour, salt, sugar, baking powder. You have wet ingredients like milk, sour cream, water, and so on. And you've got what I'm going to call flavor enhancers, so there are spices or almond extract, things like that. And then you've got decorations. So we'll say you're trying to do a birthday cake. You know, you're going to put rosettes on there and use the tips on the bag and do all sorts of fancy decorations. Guitar building, in some sense, is the same way. You've got, if you will, the dry, you know, basic building blocks are all your wood components, and then the wet ingredients, if you will, are all the hardware components, the tuners, the bridge, the truss rod, things like that. The flavor components are the pickups and the electronics and the values that I choose and how they get wired together. And the decorative aspects are, well, the finish. Is it just plain, let the wood shine through, if you will, or am I dyeing it? Am I applying some other type of finish to it? Am I using fancy inlays on the neck? Things like that, what kind of knob I use, that don't really affect the playability or the sound, but do affect the visuals. So I've got one down, actually two, got another one done. So another 8 to finish organizing. See you next time.